we don't have, there's not like a presentation that, or a class lecture that we're going to make today. So it's less about specific content that we're trying to deliver to you. After a while, Walter will share some project experiences with us, and certainly that will be maybe the equivalent of a lecture for you. But in terms of the different classes that you're taking, we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about what we're doing and give you a chance to ask questions, in particular questions that have some resonance amongst all of us, or many of us. So it's, I would rather it's not kind of get into that, well, there's this one little part of my project that I did whatever, this thing that was unique to me. But I'm interested in us talking about the things that all of us are wrestling with on the projects. And I think, honestly, that there are more of those than not. Michael, okay, I'll just start into this, and then we can redirect if we want to talk specifically about the eco-plan. But in terms of the design projects and the work that we're doing, as you know from your schedules, we don't have a lot of time left. It feels like we just started, and now once you all get back, we'll have just a handful of classes before the semester wraps up. So that being said, there's only going to be so much that we can do in that amount of time. What's key to me at this point is that you learn from what you saw, what you've done, and that you adjust your plans. Sorry, I just want to look at the schedule with you. So our trip is this week. Once we come back starting on the 22nd of March, draft final proposal in intersections with individual MRP topics. Then the next week, development, refinement. The next week, so 2 weeks, we are starting our final presentations. So there's not a lot of time, obviously, between now and then. So let's talk about focus and expectations and all those kind of things. The next step, which is what was listed as Project 8, is to be explicit about the relationship between the current studio project and your individual MRP research. I know for many of you, the MRPs have been a kind of evolving process. Hopefully you got a little more clarity last week with Dr. Steiner. After we're all done as a group, we can talk with you more individually about what you're thinking about. But just to talk a little bit about it, to kind of set a framework for you, whenever we talk about the intersections with the MRP, we're not expecting that all of your MRP interests are based in Singapore or at Labrador or involve physical planning necessarily. But we're asking you to find a relationship between the two. The relationship could be one where the project you're doing now in studio becomes a case study. It could be one for your MRP. It could be one where there's a little slice of work that you're doing for the current project that feeds directly into the MRP. They could overlap considerably. So it isn't, I'm not trying to make them mutually exclusive in some way, but I'm actually more interested in you finding what's important and interesting to you and pulling it into the project, or using the project as a vehicle to get started on it. If you ask me what's the level of development that's expected for the current project, I would answer in a little bit of a frustrating way for you by asking you two questions. One is, what are you interested in doing for your MRP? And the other is, what are you interested in doing after you're done with the program? And where do you want to go? Where do you want to leverage the program as a whole? And I'm saying that because the studio project in particular is one that it isn't one where a kind of exercise where I'm asking you to respond in a very limited way to a set of prompts and to kind of answer questions for me. I'm interested in it being a way that you can look ahead and create something that you can carry with you. You can carry with you into MRP, and you can carry with you post-graduation to employers or to other programs or whatever your sites are set on. And that's why whenever you ask what's the degree of detail or resolution, the questions for me come to where are we going with it? And for some of you, you're interested in how sustainability affects and shapes planning projects, and your kind of core interest is how do I think about physical planning relative to these issues? That's a very direct connection where this project can serve as a test for you to work through. Others of you, some of you are interested in the building scale, things that we looked at yesterday, the zero energy building, or things that we might see in this building or the one next door, where we can talk about materials and coatings and assemblies, ways to address energy or light or air, or any number of things where we could start pulling apart buildings and putting them together in different ways. That's something that you could get into in this project, but that would be a different scale of work. And it wouldn't be, let's just pursue that for a moment. If you told me, I'm interested in zero energy buildings or building assemblies that address issues of sustainability, you'll still make a kind of proposal for the entirety of the site, but in your case, that proposal, the planning proposal, might be broad and general in its nature. It may show us buildings and roads and walkways and those things, but then very quickly you'll zoom in and you're going to talk about a family of approaches to how we're addressing thermal issues or light issues or whatever at the scale of building. But everybody's not going to do that. One or two or a few of you might do that, but others of you may say, well, my interests are more at the planning scale. Maybe then you're going to spend more time thinking about relevant case studies at the planning scale. You might spend more time thinking about the transportation network, the different kinds of networks, some of the other infrastructural questions, ways that we think about the size, scale, quality of open space, recreation space, passive, active, the way that water moves under, above, through the site, the way you manage that. In which case, in yours, and whichever, all of you or some of you, then are going to be maybe looking at each of these systems. You're going to say, like we did with the single issue diagrams, you're going to say, I'm going to look, this is the story of water. This is the story of cars. This is the story of bikes. This is the story of tall buildings. This is the story of little buildings. So your plan is kind of develops in that way, right? Some of you, even within that set of issues, might have one in particular. You say, I'm thinking about water. I'm interested in water. So it's going to carry more weight than all the others. So we still, all of us, everybody in the class, has something at the scale of the whole site that organizes the site. But then you, interested in water, or you, interested in transportation, go straight to that, and you develop it in much more detail. So in terms of expectations, I can tell you, I expect you, and I'll give you this as a written document, but I expect that you all will have a kind of site, a concept plan, like a variant of what some of you have been working on already. You're going to have relevant case studies that you've identified, and we did those through the precedent research. You're going to have analytic work, some of which you've already finished, you've already done, that will feed directly into the MRP. And I'm interested in most of you, maybe a few won't fit this mold, but I'm interested in most of you getting to the qualities of the place that you're trying to create. Now, some of us are very familiar with advanced digital modeling tools, and you might say, I'm going to make a three-dimensional model or an image from that. That's fine. Some of you are very good with sketching and drawing, and you could just draw something by hand, freehand or hardline. That's fine. Some of you are uncomfortable with either of those, and you may say to yourself, I'm going to look at ways to use relatively low-tech collage to create the kinds of textures, colors, light qualities of the kinds of spaces that I'm imagining. So we'll, again, talk about that in the next week, and the next couple of weeks, but certainly in the next week. But I'm giving you that as a kind of overview, and encouraging you to start to think about how you might get there. Remember, at the very beginning of the project, I said that this class isn't just exercise, 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 but the idea is that it's cumulative. So that the early work you did with the site analysis and precedent research that was shared, right? So we all did in pieces, should start to get folded into your plan, and ultimately into your plan document. So we should see from each of you, these are important site issues that I'm responding to. These are important precedents, either things that we looked at or things you're adding in. They could be things that we've seen here, or in Groningen last week, or other examples that you've read about or visited. And they don't, whenever I talk about precedents for this kind of project, you don't have to imagine, let's say we're in a building like this one, the whole building doesn't have to relate to your project. It can simply be something about the section that's important to your project, and that's all. So we look at the section, you point to it, you tell us about the section, and then we forget about that building. Or it could be you want to talk about material systems, or you want to talk about the orientation relative to the sun, anything. But the point is that you don't have to feel like you have to tell us everything about another project. Just tell us what's important and what's relevant to you. And if we took the whole group of 11, I guess, precedent studies that you all did early in the semester, if we just took those and you asked yourself, what is relevant about each of those to what I'm doing? Maybe a couple don't have any relevance to your project, but probably 5 to 8, 10 of them would be relevant in some way, even if it's just one little thing. I would encourage you to mine the projects in that way. Not because we want you to just kind of copy-paste those things into your project, but so that you can say, I looked at that, I understood how that worked, I think that is similar in some way to what I'm doing. It gives us a way to kind of build a conceptual foundation for your project, a set of references, so that you're not kind of operating in a void of information. It gives you something to say, it worked. It worked in this place, in that place. Now I'm using it in a different climate. Now what are the issues associated with that? Or I'm thinking about a similar section, but in a different orientation. What are the issues with that? I'm thinking about a similar section in terms of building uses, but different in terms of shaping. What are the issues with that? So by having a kind of reference point, a project, another study, then you're able to start to evaluate and make proposals that have some criticality built into them already. But you've already kind of read, thought about it, taken a position, and shown us what that is. If I said, well, and some of you might be thinking this in your head, that, well, the project could be, I could be zooming in, I could be zooming out, I could be thinking about water, or somebody else is thinking about air and air quality, indoor air quality, and somebody else is thinking about the way that we're going to use certain materials. You say, well, I could do anything. And in a way you can, in terms of the focus, but recognize that I'm interested in you setting a conceptual direction, a set of questions that you're probing, and then that there's a resonance between the ideas and the questions and what you're making, and that these things are working together. If we said, how do I measure or evaluate what I've done, you should imagine that your work will give us the grounds for it to be evaluated. So what are the things that can give you a reference to know that you are doing the right thing? And that's what we want to work towards, is a project that has its own answers embedded within it, so that it is measuring itself. I can say, there are other things which I probably couldn't tell you today, but if you were asking like how many pages or how many words or how many images, I can give you a sense of some of those kind of things, but those are less important questions, because it isn't, for me, it's not kind of a checklist of did she have that many of those and that many of those, but is there a clear direction, and based on the plan, the section, the details, the precedents that you're looking at, the analysis, the three-dimensional vignettes, is there kind of response to those issues? That's what I'm looking for this class. And I'm hoping that you're starting to frame things where it has relevance for you beyond this class. That's the real goal. Okay, that's a lot of words.
Oh, it's okay.
So, questions, thoughts about what I'm telling you?
In regards to putting in our case studies that everyone's done for this final presentation or printed post-war that we do. Are we including those in there as well?
Yeah.
Flat out, like here's the case studies that we did?
Yeah, the way that things will shape up, and let me just take a draft final, development and final. So in this next week, what I'll give you is a kind of basic outline of all the components that I imagine you would include. But just to describe it to you generally, to describe it to you generally, so far in our in-class sessions, we've been making presentations through PowerPoint to each other, and we've relied on, for most of us, our spoken words to augment whatever images we show. And in some cases, those have been words that you've just said, or some of you have written them out in the bottom of the file, and then in some cases you've put things on the slides themselves. Where I want you to head in terms of specific deliverable that you are handing in, that you're producing, is a document that will be scaled for an 8.5 by 11 letter size image that would be conceived of, thought of more as a print document than as a presentation. That said, you could still use PowerPoint if you're comfortable with it, but you could also use other programs if you'd like to set that up, the visual layout of that. It means that a couple things. One, that it'll have to stand alone without any spoken component. It has to be all of the information has to land on the spreads. Now, that'll be a combination of things that you'll write or express in words, and some that are drawn or diagrams. It also means that if you're using words, that the words are scaled to probably 10 point as opposed to 20 or more points that you might have used for an online presentation. So the scaling varies. And you should imagine that there are the equivalent of sections or chapters that take you through different aspects of the plan. And some of those are going to have to do with analysis and precedent research, where you would incorporate it directly into that document. So work that you've done over the last several weeks, you'll literally pull in. So it won't be a kind of reference like, here's the presentation that I gave a month ago, look at it. It'll be just take what's relevant from that and pull it right into this project. So in a way, hopefully, whenever you're done with this, the last of this presentation, it'll all be together. All the salient parts of everything you've looked at will all be together. And you should think of that as an advantage to you, that you're able to build very directly on that. I'm not asking you to start from zero today and create whatever, 20 pages of stuff or something over the next few days, or next few weeks, sorry. I'm asking you to look back, draw from it, collect it, reorganize it, edit it, take what's relevant, pull it in, and then add to it. At the same time that we're doing that process of kind of pulling work from the past and organizing it, we're also going to be doing new things. And for many of us, the trips last week and this week hopefully have changed the way we were thinking about things. So you're going to have to look back at what you did and say, what do I still think is right, and what adjustments we need to make. Adjustments in scale and nature of the organization and focus because of how I'm thinking about my MRP now, perhaps. So those have to kind of happen together, kind of looking back at what you've done and the adjustments, the updating of the plan. Does that help? Yeah.
If we are using a slide, or can we use a slide from someone else's presentation or their information?
So,
how should we handle that?
So what I'd like for you to do, let's say that
Like
Carl researched Bishan Park.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
So let's say that Carl had some very useful information for you that you'd like to use. If it was a drawing that Carl did, or a photograph that Carl took, then you'll reference this. You'll put the photograph or drawing in, and you'll credit him. If it's words that Carl wrote about the project, you can quote those, or you can paraphrase them, but still reference that's where you got that information. Now, if Carl showed you an image that Herbert Dreisaitl made, who's the designer of the park, and then you go and find that image, and that was on a whatever web page somewhere or in a book, and you pull it from that other source. And let's say you do that for everything. You look at his and you find all of his references, and you go find those things and pull it in. Then you're going to credit Dreisaitl, and you're going to credit NUS, and you're going to credit whatever. in that case, if you've still, we'll say it in this way, worked through Carl, then we'll at least include him in the bibliography. And you may even want to include a courtesy reference on that page, just saying that this was generated in part with the assistance of or through the work of Carl. But what's key is that whoever's words or images you're using are directly credited in the document. And that can be each other, or it can be your faculty if there was some critical bit of information that we gave you in a lecture. I just mentioned bibliography. So with any kind of document like this, or certainly you've done it with papers in other classes, you should imagine that you're building your bibliography of references. It's going to be any reference that you're using. And it's easy for us to say the bibliography lists all of the sources where I got something in particular. I got that image from there, that text from there, that quote from there. Yes. But a bibliography can also be something that you use as a reference to guide you. You looked at it, you read it, and then you went to the next thing because of that. In other words, it's still contributing to the content of your paper or project, even though you may not have taken a quote from that particular document. So you should keep track of these as you go. You may have already kept track of them. If you haven't, then think about it as you go forward. You don't have to go try and, oh my gosh, I forgot about those 5 books I looked at 2 months ago. Just build it going forward if you don't have that in place. But also start to think that way as you're looking ahead to your MRP, because many of you have already started kind of looking at things and thinking about things. And I would encourage you to start building the list of references almost as you open the book, or at least once you know that the book is in the general area that you're interested in. And then you decide, like, I need all of these specific quotes, that's fine, or I don't. I need it to just understand the content of the book so that I can move forward. Okay, other thoughts and questions about this?
So 8.5 by 11 format.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're not going to be doing an actual live presentation of it to the class, because some of these, like, I can envision mine hitting 10, 20, 30, 40 pages, maybe, who knows how many, because if you're going to be very detailed about specific parts that you're trying to focus on, if we're going to do a presentation to the class of it, how do you decide, what to winnow down?
So I will ask that you're presenting to each other in class, but you should expect for those that there's going to be a lot of information that we would go through very quickly, because in most cases we will have already heard you talk about those things. And so I'll be asking you for any of those kinds of live presentations to just move relatively quickly to the key new things, or to, in particular, the way that the project has developed, whether it's, and again, it can be at multiple scales, but the final resolution of your project.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the actual, final document that we're turning into you, but it might be like a recap document in PowerPoints,
Yeah.
or maybe an abstract or something.
You could think of it that way, more like the abstract, if that helps you. For some of you, it may help to think of it that way. And I'm saying that mostly because I think it's, especially in a class like this, I would suggest in most classes, but let's say in this class, the learning from each other is absolutely critical. And it's not just you answering a set of things for me. I'm interested in each of you making proposals and then looking at each other's and understanding kind of larger context of possibilities. And so that's why the class is set up so that you're making presentations each week. That's why when I'm giving you feedback, either in person or written, I'm trying to give it to everybody. I'm wanting you to learn from each other to the extent possible. It would be different if I gave you like 10 things and then I asked you, what 10 things did I give you? And you gave them back to me and I say, yes. You only got 7 of the 10, or you got 10 of the 10, or you got 9, whatever. It can't work that way whenever we're inventing things and making things. So we need to look for ways to leverage everybody's work so that we end up with 11 really wonderful projects. And it's not a question of good and bad, it's a question of different, hopefully, at that point, and different approaches to the same core set of issues.
The live presentation, we're still shooting for 5 minutes.
I think we will find submissions. Let's see. Our calendar, I think we'll either do that or I may spread them over 2 classes and give us a little more time per person. It just means that we all finish in 1, 2 weeks, potentially, or possibly 3 weeks. I'll look at whether I can do it in other words, we have 5 classes left. Wow. After today. And whether we can do it the classes 4 and 5 or it's classes 3 and 4. So that'll set whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I guess the sooner we find that out, the better, so we can plan accordingly for the presentation.
Okay. Okay. Others, yes, ma'am.
Does the URA know that we're trying to work on this site?
They do?
So would they, if we ask them for any bit of information, would they be reluctant to meet you?
They are reluctant because they're a government organization in Singapore. So there's a lot of information on the website, but they're reluctant to share much that's not already public. That said, you can always ask, and it really depends on the person and what they're able to share. So I know, not to put her on the spot, but I know Jess is over there from time to time. You might have one kind of relationship with him that's different than my relationship or yours. And so I guess the question would start with what is it that you need, and then is that something that you or me or her or somebody could ask for?
Yeah, well, we're trying to think about like topography or some type of file where they have topography you could put into.
There's a couple of you have topography in your proposals already.
There are some topography
it's on the
maps.
internet. You can just
Yeah, you can get it.
What type of file is it?
it's a map.
Yeah.
It's a map.
Just not-
It's an image, and you can just really
You can just
scale
trace
it
the
and
line.
overlay it. It's
I think if
not,
you like put it in a 3D rendering program, so you can
This-
actually
this-
get
the
the
SketchUp,
site.
yeah, you can just
I
trace
think
it.
is doing it.
It's
SketchUp,
not,
it's on SketchUp too.
If they already have it.
but files, I don't think it will give it to you. This.
We don't have it. You could save the time.
But there are actual 3D topographical maps that you can get.
From URA, like that is most
On
accurate.
SketchUp, it's on SketchUp.
It's on SketchUp, but I picked one up that's off of. I'd have to go back and look and see where I got it. But there's one that actually shows you all of the site elevations and everything on there.
More information. to SketchUp and it'll give you the property.
Yeah, that's when I give
That's
us
why-
all the renderings and looking around the site too, that'd be nice, you know?
I'm not sure I've got that. We need reflections, blueprints, all of them, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you the answer to that one.
Yeah.
With that.
Ideally.
Okay, other thoughts?
So just to clarify, you want a series of 8.5 by 11 images for our final, or like a 8.5 by 11 one size page that's like the
No,
same
no, no,
scale
no,
but
no.
larger?
No, like
Like an 8.5,
a
11.
bunch of big
Like a
numbers.
little, not
Not a large.
Like that.
a,
I was thinking, I thought it was like
I
one.
bet you could just
Like
like,
landscape
One
page that was just
image.
like.
or like keep the
Do
same
we have-
size, or like make it bigger.
yeah, that was my other question.
No.
Like, if it stays.
No.
You want like that, like a book.
Portions.
Yeah, knowing that it can be folded in.
All about
It's
what's
just
Like a proposal, something we can hand to them.
I know, it's so weird, like,
So,
we're used
to help you think about it this way, what I'd like to be able to do is take all of your proposals and print them and be able to share that with the URA. So this is each of yours, with each of your title and your name and your work. And I'd like to be able to share that.
So you'd be holding
It's
it
so powerful.
But it's
You could just
a print
think of it as
document.
like,
All,
as
so
a,
just like
A
put these on my
a
wall like
series.
this, like a poster
So
board.
it doesn't
It's like-
matter if it's landscape or portrait.
So it will matter.
Okay, so is it going to be, I guess, landscape?
It's been, it should be landscape
does
orientation.
have to be landscape orientation.
These are A4, but close enough. But landscape orientation. And you should think of it as a series of images with text and graphics that are scaled for printing at this size. So don't think of it as like I shrink everything that I've been thinking until it's so tiny, but you could zoom in on the PDF and it could be as big as the wall. Think of it at that size. So does the image need to be half of this? Does the image need to be the whole thing? Does it need to be a bunch of little postage stamps? What's the right scale for it to be legible? But no boards. So we're not making a big panel for this presentation, or for the end project. We can do boards for other things. There are lots of, in fact, just to put it out there, we're in the right time frame. I don't have, I can send you a URL probably for it, but every couple of years, it formerly was just known as the Wholesome Foundation. Now it's Lafarge Wholesome. Some of you know. They have competitions where they invite people to submit projects, proposals, and they offer pretty substantial awards for the work. And they're interested in all of the things that we're talking about in this program. And I guess for many of you, I'd encourage you to look at it and think about it, and if the fit is right, then consider applying for that or submitting for that.
So Lafarge.
Can you spell that?
Lafarge is Lafarge, Lafarge. It's a big multinational company, and the other name is Wholesome, Holcim. Those are both two large companies. It was just the Wholesome Foundation, and now it's the Lafarge Wholesome Foundation.
until like every other year or something. It's not annual.
It's either every 2 or 3 years, and I'm pretty sure they're going to announce it this summer for the next cycle, which is why I'm mentioning to you the timing is kind of right. So obviously other things like that, you might have to submit a board or 2 panels or some other format. And we might ask you if you could do a board for some other use altogether, but for this, it's just the document, this one document. Okay. Others? Questions, thoughts? Sorry,
So-
I'm just keeping track of Tuesdays.
So when you say no border, so like on the document you're holding right there,
No, I didn't, I'm sorry if I misstated. I'm not saying no border, I'm saying no board.
no board.
Like,
Okay.
big board.
Presentation board.
Yeah, not a board, yeah.
Borders are very useful because most printers that we're going to be using aren't going to let us print full bleed all the way to the edge. So border is okay, but board not. Okay, close format. Others. So, I don't know if you have anything in particular, Michael. I know your part of the class is just ramping up, so I don't know if there are things that you need to talk with them about particularly.
Well, I don't think that we have anything specific to the class that we have to talk about, because, except to remind you that our next online class is going to be on Tuesday night instead of Monday. But I guess we didn't, we haven't really taken time, and we might be still could, but we haven't really talked in general about the two programs since I've been here, the Grow Again and the Singapore trip, and really talking and thinking about how those relate and getting your feedback on them and kind of debriefing from that. And, we may have time today, but we want to make sure that we let Walter present and have some time for individual questions. So I would just say, I guess, maybe kind of a couple things on your way home, since we all have long flights, except for Jess maybe. I'm going to take some time myself to be a little bit more constructive with my time and go through my notes and try to process them and add additional details, fill in the blanks where I was scribbling something quickly. I would do that as the first step and the first layer, and then I would also take some time to think about the issues in general, the broader issues that we've seen in these two places, such as the way they deal with water in Singapore, the way they deal with transportation. How are they doing these things, and what's good and what's bad, right? There are things, how are they dealing with landscape ecology in Singapore? They aren't really to a great degree, except in a couple localized little spots. So these are issues that there are lots of incredible things that they're doing with sustainability in Singapore. There are other things that they just don't really apply, or maybe that they're not doing well. And the same thing is true in growing into. So I would take some time to process your notes and your experiences, and do some kind of comparison between these two different trips. Why did we go to these two different locations? How are they different? And I guess the third thing I'm not going to do, but would be good for you guys to do, at the end of each semester we have an evaluation that if we're on the ball, we start emailing you multiple times as reminders to fill out evaluations for the course. If we're not on the ball, we send you a frantic email a couple days before it's due and say, hey, everybody, please fill this out.
Yeah.
That was last semester.
And I've been involved with those emails.
Like one day you had to do it.
I felt like it was really.
That was short last semester, but we do read those. They go into our evaluations, annual evaluations as faculty. But they also will help us improve this course in the future. And I would really like you to start thinking about that, up front. Think about, well, if we were going to do this trip again next year, is there something that we didn't see that I wish we had a little more time to do? Just think critically about it and start writing down some feedback, and then you can incorporate that at the end of the semester when that period opens up. So, I guess the take home point is try to spend a little time on the trip home to be constructive about this.
You're welcome to tell us those things or some of those,
Yeah.
but there's also this much more formal process, which, depending on what you want to say, it may be more comfortable one way or the other. But certainly, we've been to Singapore a number of years, done different things each year. Some things consistent, so yeah, whatever feedback you can offer on both trips is helpful.
I'll make a suggestion for the Singapore, the Amsterdam to Singapore route.
Okay.
The university should look into getting a group discount program for everybody to potentially do that flight, because we're all doing the flight. So we show up, we leave all at the same time, we all show up at the same time, instead of sort of stringing out or having to figure it out ourselves. I mean, you could leave that open as an option, but maybe the university could get better fares.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Get a block at a lower price.
Yeah, last year it was, and actually every year before this year, it's been the other way, where we were here first and then there. But even in that situation, we could still go as a group.
Can't remember if it was mentioned here or in Groningen. Is there a separate survey? Sorry, Groningen. That we were supposed to fill out
A separate survey for,
for this trip? I'm trying to remember if it was mentioned here.
I mean, we could probably fashion one for you, but
Do we have
there's
to
not.
scramble to get that done too?
No, there's nothing. Right. Okay. Other thoughts? If you, just out of curiosity, since we're talking a little bit about the trips, if you could pick, and that may vary in group, I don't know, but would you go there first or here first?
I would probably go there first and then here.
Yeah.
Just because I think I like going to the cooler climate first than the hotter climate, because Florida's already going to be, I mean, we're already warming up in Florida at that point anyway.
Right.
But I feel like the time transition, like getting back into a work schedule would be better if we went the other way. Because we would have been closer to our home time zone and then
Close.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
that
some
would be
front
easier.
adjusted a bit.
You're incrementally closer to home. You go far and then work your way back.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're approaching from the thermal comfort, and you're kind of on the schedule side.
because getting back on a Sunday and then going to work on a Monday, I just feel like it would probably be a little bit easier
Yeah,
at shorter time.
And then I think I would say, all right, everyone needs to be here by this date and by this time.
uh-huh,
So it's not like, okay, well, we're here at 9 a.m. Like what happened here, I guess, actually, we're here at 7 a.m. And we couldn't get into the hotel until 3, 2, and then like we had to pay a fine or a fee just to get into the room early.
To get in your room early.
And we didn't really know what was going on, so like, we're like, oh, everyone needs to make sure their flight, kind of piggybacking on Daniel. If we get the group break, we all make sure we're all here at the same time, that way we can start whenever instead of, well, we can't start for another 8-10 hours because other people are not here.
Excuse me.
Hey, we were.
No, I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
it would probably be easier for you guys as well if the schedule was made before and we made our plane trips to the
Yeah.
schedule as opposed to you guys trying to make a schedule around our plane trips.
mhm,
Because I felt, like it's 4 o'clock too late for me to get there, but that was the only direct flight on the airline I was already flying. So if I'd known, you need to be here this day by 2 p.m., then I could make my decision, do I want to be there a day early or just an hour early?
mhm.
Maybe that wasn't communicated clearly enough, but I know that at least in my mind, I knew we were going to start on Wednesday. So I assumed anytime Tuesday was fine for y'all to arrive.
Yeah.
And see, but coming here, it said, travel the 14th, be here on the
The
15th.
15th.
I didn't know, do we need to be here in the morning on the 15th or in the afternoon on the 15th? But I think if, it was probably harder to build a schedule around 10 people than it would for us to build our flights around a
The schedule.
I think just including a schedule in advance a little bit so we know what to pack and what we're going to be doing would be really helpful. And so then we know what we'll be covering in the trip, so we'll know what to plan out when we have some free time.
And then I think from my point of view or from my perspective where I had to apply for a visa, especially for the Netherlands, it was quite difficult to work around and it was quite stressful when a clear schedule is not intact because the immigration, the officer actually in fact asked for a very detailed schedule and I had to rely on a local tour company to come up with a schedule for me for the meantime when the schedule is not yet available so that they have something to show to.
So for us, we flew to DC and Miami 2 times, but when we went to Miami first, they told me that there is a conflict between Groningen and Singapore. Like they want, one country wants visa of this country first, then they want country of that visa. Because they said that you should get out of the country as soon as possible. So, and this country is telling that you should get out of our country into going that one. So they are all pushing each other. So we had to like convince them. And the second thing, sir, we did not get the hotel reservation. I did from my pocket to book a reservation in Singapore and in Groningen to make our visas. Otherwise, the travel agents I directly spoke and they told me that the university was not paying them at the particular moment of time. That is why they cannot make the schedule even. And they cannot pay for the hotel reservations. And we did not get until the last, after we got the visa, we got a phone call that, do you want your reservations? I said, no, it's okay. So we had gone through a lot.
So how did it end up in terms of which country did you have to get the visa from first?
So Singapore doesn't want a visa of the Groningen Netherlands, but the Netherlands want a visa for Singapore first. Shenzhen visa.
So you had to apply for.
We applied for Shenzhen visa first,
Right.
but they told no, we cannot do for you because they are not. We don't know that how to apply it. So they told me that until and unless you cannot go from the country of Netherlands or Shenzhen country, you cannot allow to apply for a visa. Then when we again came in, then we again applied to Singapore first. So we had a very short moment of time, otherwise we would have not made it to here.
Okay.
They needed at least, for us.
So they need at least 4 weeks
for
to be
us
on the
it's
safe
2 months.
side.
4 weeks.
4 weeks
You had
to
2
apply for a
months.
visa.
Yeah.
So with the train tickets, with train, plane and the hotel reservations.
4 weeks to apply for the visa, and ultimately you had to get it from
The travel agent.
Netherlands first?
No, first we have to get Singapore first, then you have to get Netherlands.
Okay.
Jess said she needed
So
2
we
months.
spent around $1,500 to $2,000 just traveling without anything.
It depends on which country you will go back.
Sir, and there is another thing for the students to know that if you are applying for a Shenzhen country for an international students, so you apply the visa for the country which you stay the most time.
Right.
The Shenzhen countries are a lot of countries which are involved in that.
Right.
So we stayed in Groningen, that is in Netherlands for the 7 days.
Right.
So but we flew to Germany, Iceland, so many countries.
Right.
So we had to apply to that country which is we stayed the maximum number of days. That
Which
nobody.
is the Netherlands.
That nobody it's not written on the website or not written specifically.
Okay. But that is.
So this
okay.
information was totally new to us.
Right.
So in that way we lose a lot of money on that.
Okay. That's a regular process, the Schengen one, but it may not have been explained to you clearly, or it may not have been
So
clear.
we also booked from our hotels and flight tickets and everything. We did it much before because we knew that there will be a problem for visas and all. So, but we did not get the hotel reservation until the last week.
Okay. So it took you 4 weeks, and Jess, you said 2 months.
They need at least that so that if you have any problems, you can still address it in time for the trip.
Okay. For your arrangements, were you working through for all of your world-class travel, or were you on your own?
I was-
On your own.
I used
to-
something in Texas.
I was totally on my own for setting mine up.
Yes.
I wouldn't have done it if it were not the local company because they did all the fake booking, fake arrangements, so that it could go through, especially for the hotel. Because,
So that is what we
yeah.
got very much problem, because the travel agent gave us a number.
Yeah.
They told us that this is the reservation number, you can go to the embassy and call the embassy. When they checked, and we are in Miami, and they told that this is fake.
So
You have not made a
what
reservation.
company gave you, what travel company were you working with?
So in Gainesville, World Travel Company.
And they, so I can understand the issue. It sounds like the fate was that,
They booked it, but you have to actually reserve and pay
Yeah,
for that to get a
reserve.
reservation number.
Mine
One is a
didn't
reference
indicate.
number and one is a reservation number. So
Right.
they gave us a reference number. So we thought that we are already reserved in that, but they had not made the payment until and unless they got the payment from the university. So when we went to the embassy told that you are coming with a fake document. These are all fake. We have no bed. And when we called to the hotel said, who are you? And I don't know you. So we had to again book ourselves the hotel and reserve it and pay for it. Then we took that document again to them.
okay. So the way it should work is you should have to make your flight reservation, and then that's needed for your visa.
Yes, sir. The hotel reservation also.
So if you didn't have that, then that's where the problem started.
So the problem ends when you have a US passport. So that is what I'm working on.
They don't all have.
You have to be here 5 years first in
No,
the
no,
country.
Or get married, right?
Yeah.
Well, even married is like 3 years.
So we're-
Actually, married is 5 years, I think.
No.
Well, that's a lot easier.
It's just 1 year. If you get married 1 year, you have to show the police that you are staying within in your house with your fiancé for 1 year.
Maybe that's U.S. citizenship. Maybe you can get the passport beforehand. U.S. citizenship. My wife had to stay here, married 5 years before she could apply to become
Now
a
it's not
citizen.
like that, because when I stayed in Miami in Airbnb, so the host
He was down there like, will you marry me?
no,
That happened at the VCA yesterday. Someone put on if you didn't have to work for money or whatever, what would you do? And someone said,
Marry a U.S. citizen.
"Wifey," and then someone said, will you marry me? You can do that.
Somebody said,
Right now, I'm talking about a coffee shop.
It was actually, she used to wrote that.
Oh,
Mail
she's We'll fit in suitcase to travel.
But he wants a US passport, so really you should try that back home.
Okay.
Mail order, sheesh.
Go see you in the catalog.
Ultimately, just so I understand on the logistics side, you all made your own flight reservations. The hotels were arranged by Michael, not that Michael, but the other Michael.
travel agent. Yeah, Michael.
And World Class. Was that the case for both Groningen and here? So, okay. And for the visas, you guys were applying directly for your visas, or
No, sir, we are on our
they
own.
through the university?
No, sir.
We applied individually.
Anyway.
Okay, so in years past, the university has managed that process, so I don't know why it's not this year, so that's a good note.
So, but we need a university letter which was provided to us,
Yeah,
but not without the reservations, they don't allow to apply even for the visa.
right. Yeah, they shouldn't allow you without the reservation. That's a usual requirement. Okay. Okay, that is helpful.
So for international students, it is better to come here first than Netherlands, because we have a US visa anyhow, who are studying in US. So the Netherlands do not require, they will not tell you that you need this country's visa first, you need this country visas first. And getting Singapore visa is much easier than Netherlands. So if the international students come here first, they can easily get the Netherlands visa and it will be a very smooth visa process. But when you come the other way around, Singapore has no problem because we have the US visa passport. We can get out of this country,
Right.
and but we cannot get out of that country. So there is a miscommunication for the international students. But for US passport, you can go anywhere, just like US.
Well, yeah.
Just about.
but-
Except North Korea, don't go there.
Okay, and
North Korea.
similar for you guys?
Yes.
So we was.
But and I asked our senior from USD, did not make this situation before.
Yeah,
This is the first time we.
yeah, it sounds all new. Okay.